Lee, let me start with you. It's 50 years later, but the message of the march still resonates and the issues are still before us.
Oh, there's no question about it. We've still got to talk about the creation of quality jobs in this country. We've still got to talk about the fact that voting rights are trying to be taken away from us. They're trying to take it away. They're trying to take our civil rights away, workers' rights, collective bargaining. The issues that we were confronted with in 1963, although we've made great advances, but the same issues that we confronted in 1963, we're confronted with right now. And that's why this march is so important. This is not just about a commemoration. This march is about a rededication, a recommitment to what we must do as a community. And it can't be a one-day march. It's got to be a march where we sing the praises of 1963 tomorrow. We talk about the challenges of today and tomorrow, and then we go into our communities from now into the future and talk about what kind of country we want to really live in.
You know, Dennis, the educational policies in this country, the right wing has said, on one hand, we want to be the ones to bring education to the next level, but we're going to defund it, we're going to privatize it, we're going to take away teachers' wages. I can't think of a more important civil right in this country than the democratization of education and taking care of those workers that make it work.
Absolutely. You know, when we talk about jobs and freedom, the road to make that happen all across this country, and especially for every single citizen in America and the kids, our next generation, that's going to go through education. I think one of the really special things about this march, we reached back into our retired membership and we found a whole group who had been there in 1963. And we've got them here and they're talking to people. And we also did a 2-day training with young people. We forget sometimes how young all those people were who were in that march in 1963. And we've got to do both. And Lee hit it on the head. By engaging and training these young people to be activists, we're going to make sure the dream lives on beyond this year, way into the future.
You know, Lee, Dr. King went to Memphis and was killed helping a strike of the local of your union. And you go back every year and help that local commemorate. But that showed how closely labor and civil rights work together then. Walter Reuther, we saw from UAW, but even Southern locals were so intricately involved in the movement, and that's what we've tried to rebuild and have done so with this march this 50 years later. If we all are together, this is a power that can't be resisted.
I believe you're exactly right. Dr. King understood this. He understood that this was a fight about civil rights. This was a fight about human rights. This was a fight about labor rights, economic rights, workers' rights. And he was able to merge all of those kinds of arguments and all of those kinds of segments in our society, and we came together. That coalition came together because of his work. And we must never, ever forget that. And that's why we're commemorating this march, commemorating the 1963 march tomorrow, but we're going to work towards the future and ensure that we have quality jobs, quality education, workers' rights, civil rights, and human rights, and voting rights.
Dennis, when they left 50 years ago, by the next year, 64, they had the Civil Rights Act. By 65, the Voting Rights Act. What do you hope we can leave here and accomplish in the next couple of years?
Oh, wouldn't it be wonderful just to have them introduced in this Congress? But we've got to get Congress to understand that the road forward in this country is what Lee talked about. It's about economic rights and voting rights and engaging all citizens, not just some. So as we look forward, I hope we start a new movement, something that engages young and old and everyone in between, to say the America we have today is not the America we want in the future. And it's going to take all of us working together to make that dream come alive.
Lee, we have a midterm election. People are already doing voter suppression, voter ID, ending early voting. How important is protecting the vote, the right to vote, and registering voters?
Oh, it's the number one priority. I mean, we've got to recognize that if we don't have that right to vote, if we let these voter rights advocates try to take away our right to vote, then we're going to lose in 2014. And everything that Dr. King fought for and so many of our allies and coalition partners fought for would have been for naught. We have got to make sure through Congress and through our communities that we make people understand the importance of what they are trying to do as far as trying to steal our voices and steal our voting rights away from us. That's why it's so important. We've got to go back to our communities, Al, after tomorrow. We've got to educate. We've got to mobilize. We've got to organize, not only for tomorrow and the next day, but up until 2014 and beyond.
Now, Dennis, we have these voter rights questions, but we also have right-to-work states, union busters, where they glorify in trying to break the unions like if the unions are doing something wrong. I mean, it's the most ugly anti-human climate I've heard since studying about it when I was a kid. How do you combat that?
You know, I think sometimes we forget how we got rid of child labor, how we got a 40-hour work week, how we got vacation and health care for workers. None of those were given to us by benevolent CEOs. It was by engaging the voice of middle-class America. What made America great was the fact that we built this strong middle class, and that was done by labor in this country. It was coming together, giving a voice to the every common, everyday guy who's going to work every day and every woman. That's what we need again. We've got to raise everybody's level of compensation and rights and responsibility, not just some.
You know, Lee, in Detroit, where they just filed bankruptcy, they are actually talking about messing with people's pension. A city that the auto billionaires companies got bailed out, and they're talking about taking workers' pension. I mean, if people want to know why we're marching.
You know, the retirees' pensions in Detroit average $19,000 a year. Yet they want to attack the workers, they want to attack retirees. We've got to say no. We are not going to let that happen. They are using workers as scapegoats, and that's one of the reasons that we're out here tomorrow, and we're going to be here until we're able to fight successfully for workers' rights all over this country. It is a shame that folks would go after a retiree who makes $19,000 a year expecting that they can sacrifice more. We've got to say no to that, Al. All of us, our communities, our coalition partners, labor unions, we've got to say that that's unacceptable.